For the first time in many months, Ted and I are back in the studio. We've got lots to discuss, and it all starts right now.
This is Debt Free in 30. Here's your host, Doug Hoyes.
Ted, welcome back. We've made it through Labor Day. So what did you do to stay sane all summer?
Well, as you know, I've got 3 school-aged kids, so it was a fair bit of time in the pool, a fair bit of time in the garden, and a lot of time saying, get off that electronic device and read a book.
Yes, because kids today, they like to do that. So as everyone who is watching, and if you're watching this on YouTube, will see that, yes, in fact, we are back in the studio.
Today is Doug under glass.
That's right, but we do have a protective covering here for the brief time that we are together in the same studio. We closed our offices to in-person meetings back around the middle of March.
Yep.
And so we've been meeting with all of our clients by Zoom video and telephone since then. It's certainly been different. We're now gradually moving back into the office. Staff are returning, but only for a limited number of days each week. So we're going to split our time between working remotely and working in the office. And obviously lots of protocols in place, masks and so on and so forth. The expansion of our head office in Kitchener is now complete, so we got lots of room to spread out.
That was a timely decision
yes,
we made.
So had we known about the whole virus, perhaps we wouldn't have done that. I mean, it's been great for everybody working from home. I mean, in certain circumstances. I mean, I've been happy. I've been able to get my workouts in every day, as I'm sure you have as well. I mean, I've been working on my pull-ups and my push-ups and my deadlifts, and I'm realizing that I've got horrible form because I'm an old guy who's not very strong. But hey, everyone can laugh at me. What do I care? So let's talk about money. So last week on the season premiere, this is the second show of season 7, in case anybody is keeping track.
Right.
Episode number 315. Last week I ran through all the numbers, so if you're interested, you can go back and listen to episode 314. I said that since the lockdown started, personal insolvencies are down, the savings rate is up, and why is that? So let's start with the first question. We've talked about this a bit over the summer. Why is it that the personal insolvency rate is down? Why are fewer people filing a consumer proposal or a bankruptcy?
Well, in most cases, the final thing that motivates you to come to talk to somebody like, well, yourself or myself, is that you're either being hassled by a collector, you've received documents that somebody's suing you, or perhaps Revenue Canada has finally found out you haven't filed your taxes in a zillion years. There's always somebody pushing you, some kind of outside influence forcing you out into action. Right now, none of those influences are actually doing anything. And so the people filing now are the ones that they've internalized the pressure. They know they've got an issue, they want to deal with it, and we're helping them relieve stress. A lot of folks don't come to see us until, effectively, it's often too late.
Right. But if I'm working and I know I'm going to have to deal with this anyways, might as well get it done.
Right.
And the fact that nobody is actually garnishing my wages today, well, I know it's coming, I might as well deal with it.
That's right.
Now, the savings rate has spiked way up, which is really interesting. And again, I talked about this a bit last week. I'm worried about the future. So if I am working, maybe I'll tuck some money away, but also not a whole lot I can be spending money on.
I mean, it's a good way of demonstrating that if you're able to save money now, what were you doing before that's different? So you were going out, maybe you were eating out or just going to the movies, or who knows, even Tim Hortons on your way to and from work. All of those things cost money. You're not allowed to do any of those things right now, or you're only just starting to do them again. On top of that, you throw in the loan deferrals and everything else. And it's easy to see how people could do it. I hope they paid down debt.
Yeah, and I think some people absolutely did. And then other people, and often through no fault of their own. If I'm not working, if all I've got is the CERB,
right,
I got to pay my rent. I can't really be servicing debt. So you will recall our year-end prediction show.
Yes.
A classic show that everyone goes back and watches. So if I remember correctly, I predicted that personal insolvencies in 2020 would go up by 20%.
I believe I said 10%.
You said 10%.
I'm equally wrong.
Yes, and so for the first couple of months of this year, I was looking pretty good because we were sort of running 15, 16% up. And then, of course, we've had this massive boom, and insolvency rates have dropped considerably. So what do you see going forward for the last part of this year?
Yeah. So at least the next couple of months are going to look like what the last few months have been. So if you want to compare it to last year, we're off by, 45%?
Yeah, somewhere, depending on where you are in Canada and whatnot, somewhere between 35 and 50% fewer insolvencies being filed this year than last year.
So I think that's going to continue for the foreseeable future. until the folks at the federal government get active with trying to collect on tax debts again, until the courts catch up with their backlog, until people are back to work, none of this can change.
Yeah, and so we can't predict the future until you tell us what the future is.
Something like that.
That's pretty much how it is. So if you tell me that there's this new vaccine that's going to be instantly effective starting on October the 12th, okay, well then people are back to work on October 13th. We can sort of work it from there, but clearly that's not going to happen. That's not the way the world works. So it will all depend on how quickly people are back to work. Now, does it surprise you that even today there are roughly 7 consumer proposals filed for every 3 bankruptcies? So roughly, I think, last numbers I looked at, somewhere around 72% of filings in Ontario were consumer proposals, and it fluctuates somewhere between sort of 72, 75%. Obviously, bankruptcies are a lot less than that. Well, the other 30-some percent. Does that surprise you? I mean, we got unemployment is high.
Yeah, I was expecting the bankruptcy percentage to be higher. And when things start going again and get really busy, I think the bankruptcy percentage will be higher. So it's interesting that we're doing more proposals right now.
And obviously, all the stats we have, we're looking at in arrears. We don't have August numbers yet because it's too far.
But our in-house ratios are usually 2 to 1, aren't they?
Yeah, and we're still running. We're still doing lots of proposals. So I think that's good. People want to work out a plan to deal with their debt. So there's certainly nothing wrong with that. Now, you and I have been spending a lot of time, as have the rest of our team, talking to people on the phone.
Right.
What is the general vibe you get? What's the general mood you get? What are people thinking? What do you...
So back in April and May, there was a lot more tension and stress, the fear about the unknown. Now people are more relaxed with working at home, and their concern is, when are all these government benefit programs going to run out? So it's a different level of stress because after 6 months, people have gotten used to the situation. And now we're about to have more changes because the benefits will run out. More people will be back to work. The courts will get active again. I mean, so the world is about to shift gears on folks, but they're not feeling the stress yet because it hasn't happened.
Yeah, and the world is changing so fast.
Right.
That, I mean, even if you just look at the CERB program, it was originally going to be, I can't remember, for 3 months, then it became 4 months, then it became 5 months, and then the EI program. And as we're recording this, I'm sure something else is changing already anyways. So that uncertainty is causing, obviously, a bit of stress. But I agree, it's a different kind of stress. It's not the mass panic.
Right. People aren't terrified. Now they've got this, it's like a sore tooth. It doesn't have to come out tomorrow, but it's still there and it's still bugging them, but I've learned to live with it.
Yeah. And now you're out in the community. I mean, I stay in my basement all day long, but you're actually going out, buying groceries.
I do the grocery shopping. So
you just came back from our favorite store, Costco, to buy some supplies. So what are you seeing out there? Are people in general wearing masks all the time? Are they not? Is it different than it was a month ago? What's your general vibe? So
the mask discipline is actually getting better as opposed to worse. A month ago it was people would wear them, but they weren't wearing them properly, and not everybody was wearing them. Today at Costco, everybody was wearing them, and it looked like they were all wearing them properly. So people have gotten used to that. There aren't the lineups at the supermarkets that I saw before because people have adjusted their patterns too. So if you were to go on a Monday afternoon, there'd be 30 people outside, take you 45 minutes to get in the store. So now okay, maybe I'll go on Sunday morning at 9 o'clock when there's no lineup. The flip side of that, of course, is that it used to be people wouldn't touch anything. They were being very conscious of that. Now they're back to their old habits of picking it up, looking at it, and I don't want that, I'm putting it back. So
yeah. I think of it kind of analogous to seatbelts.
Yeah.
Because you remember in 1950 when they came in or whenever it was.
I have a number of cars without seatbelts.
I'm sure you do. So that was probably more the 70s. I don't know when they came in. But when they first came in, it was like, well, I don't want to do this and there's really no point and it's not going to help me anyways. Right. And it's kind of silly. But of course, they passed a law saying you had to do it. So then, okay, well, if I have to do it. And now it's just what we do.
Yeah, I mean, if you were to not do up your seatbelt, your kid will sit there. Why aren't you doing your seatbelt?
Yes.
I mean,
so your kids are good policemen, I guess,
something like that.
For you. So okay, let's talk about cars since we're talking seatbelts. My recollection is that when the lockdown started, car sales basically stopped because I can't go to the dealership, I can't buy anything.
Right.
But my understanding now is that things have really picked up.
Mm-hmm.
So, and my understanding is that the problem now is more a supply issue.
Right.
Because factories, of course, are dependent on the whole world and stuff moving around and so on and so forth. why would people be buying a car now? I mean, if we're all stuck at home, why are you buying a car?
Well, so part of it is you've got more time to be influenced on the various marketing. So you're sitting at home, you got more time to think about what do I want, what could I do? Part of it is that if you're not doing all of those other things to spend your money, you suddenly find out I got some more cash now. Maybe I can actually afford a car. And the third is it's people are rewarding themselves. They think they're going to get a better deal, and they might be right.
Well, interest rates are still low.
Yep.
So if you're financing a car, I guess, there are still deals to be had out there.
And then, they're all still doing their employee pricing, their family pricing. The incentives are pretty good. But you hit the nail on the head, too. If you don't have something off the lot, you'll have to go to another dealer. They're going to sell you what they've got because that's what they got to move. And they're not going to get something to replace it.
And again, you and I know people in the business, and what they're telling us is, well, it used to be that if you wanted a blue one of those with that engine, whatever, I'd just call the guy with the dealership 2 towns over. He'd ship it over. We'd trade whatever. Whereas now it's like, nope, I'm not giving up any of my inventory
because I may not get another one. I've got to have it to sell. I think there's also, I'm not getting on a plane and going anywhere. Yep.
So if my vacation this past summer was going to a cottage up north, well, I need a reliable car for that. Maybe in the future I'm going to be doing more than that. And is it possible that as more and more people get to go back to work, more and more people drive back to work? Like, do you really want to take public transit if you could drive? Yeah,
that's a subtext that the environmentalists aren't going to want us to talk about. But yeah, people will feel safer in their own car than they will on a bus or an LRT line or...
Yeah, and we're not here advocating anything. We're just simply observing what is going on.
Right.
And I would think that, well, if I live in Mississauga and work in Toronto, do I take the GO train? Do I take the bus? Or do I drive in? Well, I guess if fewer people are back in the office, then parking is less of an issue.
Yeah.
So maybe instead of costing $30 a day, maybe it only costs $20. And maybe it's worth it then to drive back in, which I guess would be a reason why someone would be...
And that'll change too. The more people get back to work, people will get back to their old patterns and habits. That's just normal.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what patterns we go back to and what patterns we don't. So you already raised the issue of, people are able to save money if their paycheck hasn't been affected, but if they're working at home. So at what point do you say, finally, I can go to a restaurant? At what point do you say, finally, I can go back to the movie theater, or whatever? And I don't know. What.
Well, we're part of the crowd that we're deliberately ordering in one day a week to keep the local restaurants open because those guys are really struggling. But you're right. So the families that used to buy 2-3 times a week, my guess is they don't do it anymore.
Yeah, that may be a permanent change in behavior because what does it take? I don't know, 21 days or whatever.
And they've been talking about the people ordering their groceries online. That may be a permanent change in behavior.
Yep. Well, and particularly if you've got any kind of, immunocompromised issues, then why would I not go online, have it shipped to me? And I understand, you talk about picking up the thing to look at it.
Right.
Well, I guess I want to make sure my, whatever it is I'm buying is good. But if what I'm buying is a box of cereal,
right,
or, something more packaged, well, does it really matter? So maybe we get some kind of hybrid model where instead of going to the grocery store every week or every 2 weeks, I go less frequently, but I get a shipment of, the basics.
I keep meaning to call my sister who lives in Germany, and they go shopping, basically every other day to buy fresh stuff. They get little tiny refrigerators. Be interesting to see what happens over there.
Well, you can report back to us on the next show.
Right.
But I think that's probably what we'll see, some kind of hybrid model. You've heard of Amazon, this other company where you can buy absolutely everything. And in our neighborhood, we see the truck because it's the same guy. He's got
on Sundays.
Any day of the week.
Yep.
He's got this white van, a medium-sized van, and he's just going from house to house to house. And they've now got it down to a science, right? You get the alert saying, oh, you're delivery number 47. He's on number 12, and he just leaves it on your front door, and off you go. Do you think that's something that we will continue to do because now we're used to it? Or is it like, oh, no, I'm definitely going back to the store?
No, it's a convenience item. People are going to realize that this works really well and it's cost effective.
Until it's not cost effective, I guess.
Right.
Because is it cost effective to have that guy deliver every single thing?
Can't see how it is, but Amazon, is Amazon actually making money yet? They never really make any money. You can't tell.
Yeah, if you delve deep into their financial statements, they make a lot of money on AWS, their web services.
Right.
Amazon Web Services, because pretty much every website is hosted on their servers.
Yep.
So they make a ton of money on that. The rest of it, who knows? But I guess that may be the kind of thing where once they become the dominant player, which I guess they already are, and once every store in the world is closed down, then they can be jacking up prices. So,
I don't remember the name of the Amazon equivalent in China, but it's 5 times as big as Amazon. So it's
yeah, I know what you're talking about. Ends with the letter U or something. So so should I be buying a car now or not then?
Yeah, the reasons for buying a car haven't changed just because we're in the middle of a pandemic. So if financially it makes sense to you from your lifestyle, from your needs, from your wants, yes. If you're doing it on some kind of impulse, that's almost always the wrong time to buy a car. And that doesn't change again regardless of the situation.
So your advice is you got to think.
Right. Put some thought in it. Car's a big purchase. For most people, it's the second or third largest purchase they're ever going to make. House being the first one, then either your education or car would slot into number 2. Cars because you do more over your lifetime.
Yeah, and I guess you really got to think through, well, am I going to be driving more or less? Because if you're now going to be back in the office, if you're working remotely permanently, or if you're only back in the office a couple of days a week, then I guess I can defer that purchase.
Right. Well, and are you a household that, you've always had 2 cars because both of you are working, and now if you're both working from home, maybe you can get by with 1. I mean, there are all sorts of permutations. And
it's an interesting number to crunch because it's not just the car payment. There's the insurance and gas and everything else.
Yep.
So maybe that'll make a big difference. And do you have any sense in where interest rates are going? Can you tell me exactly what they will be 47 days or 6 months from now? Or
until there is increased demand for money, I don't think interest rates are going anywhere. So right now there's no increased pressure on the markets, right? Yeah,
and the other thing that nobody knows is what's going to happen politically. We've got an election in the U.S. in November. Well, I already know what's going to happen with that. You can call me and I'll tell you. But we've potentially got one in Canada. It could be tomorrow or could be within the next 6 months or a year. So whether that changes things or not, who knows?
Right.
Again, that's just a total unknown. The other unknown is there's been a lot of jobs that have disappeared.
Right.
And may or may not come back. So I look at it as 2 different groups of people. And again, I talked about this a bit last week. You've got one group who's been absolutely crushed by this.
Yep.
So anybody in a customer-facing business.
You're not going to talk about your barber?
Well, yes. My barber would be anybody who cuts hair. And it's not just the hair cutting, of course, because there's the color and there's the other stuff that I don't
do.
Fully understand. You got to put tinfoil in your hair. And I'm gonna find out what that all means at some point. But yeah, it used to be I got someone getting their color done while I'm cutting somebody's hair. Well, now I got to be social distancing, physical distancing. I've got half as many chairs. Is that a thing where a lot of people, I just got used to having longer hair.
Yep.
I bought the little trimmer. I'm going to trim it and I'm going to go in less frequently. Is that the kind of job that perhaps will not be as prevalent going forward in the future?
Probably. But that probably also means that the price of it will go up.
Because it'll have to.
Right.
Because I've still got to pay the same level of rent and everything else.
Supply and a demand, Dr.
That's how it works.
Sushi, right?
That's how it works. So, well, and I mean, here's some other industries that have been totally hammered. Tourism.
Right.
So anything to do with tourism, hotels, tour companies, tour buses, that kind of thing.
Don't forget those big boats people like to go on.
Absolutely. Cruise ships. Well, and apparently people are going back on cruises now, which is stunning to me. But is that not the kind of industry that goes away forever? Like, I just...
It won't ever go away forever, but it would shrink and it'll morph into something else. So the people that'll go will either be the young that think they're invincible, or it'll be the folks that can afford enough space on the boat that it doesn't matter. So it'll either become very exclusive or very yeehaw.
There you go. There's the prediction for you people. Well, and I guess things like the big buffet line, well, won't be doing that anymore. It'll have to be, different type of dining experience. Anything to do with immigration. I mean, we've always had, not always, but for the last few years, we've had net immigration, obviously, into Canada. And part of that was students coming in. Part of that was just workers. Well, if unemployment is high here, why would I be immigrating to Canada? If post-secondary education is all online and virtual, why would I be moving to Toronto if I can continue doing it from somewhere else?
And any place that won't let us go there, we won't let them come here.
Yeah, which is pretty much every place. So I think immigration, and it's not just immigration, but it is immigration services. So here in our kitchen or office, we share a building with the YMCA Immigration Services, who have also been essentially shut down to in-person contact since March. So that's another unintended effect. Events. concerts, trade shows, exhibitions. So the convention business is a huge thing.
Right.
And
it's basically gone.
And so, I mean, you and I have both talked to people who work in that industry, the planners and the coordinators and whatnot. And okay, we're trying to do stuff by Zoom, but the whole reason for a convention is not really to learn something.
Right. It's the experience. It's the way you feel.
Yeah. Right? And it's, we go out and we have a few drinks after the speaker or whatever. Well, you're not doing that over Zoom. So that may be, considerably changed. Air travel.
Right.
Like, what's up with that, right?
And it was already heavily subsidized by most national governments, so who the hell knows what's going to come out of that?
And I wouldn't even hazard a guess. Large gatherings, weddings, funerals, clubs, bars, indoor gatherings, theaters, malls. So have you been in a mall in the last few months?
I was in the mall last week to get stuff for my kids because I think they're going back to school.
Yeah.
Sorry, they went back to school last week, but it's there was nobody there.
Yeah, so
which was kind of nice.
It's kind of a deserted thing. So do malls change? Does it? I mean, who knows?
So now you're talking about commercial real estate overall. All this expensive real estate that may never get used again.
Yeah, and what happens to that? So does every commercial building become an Amazon warehouse or a distribution center?
Right. Or a youth hostel, drop-in center.
I don't know, but I guess that would not be the first thing I'd be investing in.
Right.
So overall, are you an optimist about the situation we're in, the world today?
Now, I think this is just another one of those, life has thrown us a curveball and we got to figure out how to deal with it. So there'll either be a vaccine or some sort of solution 6 months, 9 months, a year from now. And by then, most of us will have had to have adapted somehow anyway. The fallout will be, well, again, all these things we already talked about. Some patterns are going to change. Some jobs are just going to be gone. Other new opportunities are going to be created.
Yeah, and it's very hard to see the future because obviously we'd all know what stocks to buy. Yes, exactly. We'd all be rich. But yeah, I'm with you. I happen to be an optimist. And the reason is the human race is undefeated.
Right.
Like nothing has wiped us out yet. We've been around for a while.
And we keep trying.
And we keep trying to wipe ourselves out. But there have been pandemics before. There have been issues before. There's been wars. I mean, all sorts of stuff. And obviously some people aren't here. But the human race itself is still here.
Right.
So I got to believe we're going to figure this out. But yes, I also believe things are going to change. So we had 9/11 and that changed air travel.
Yep.
It's different now. You got to go through the scanners. You got to do this. You got to do that. I think this will permanently change things. I mean, I assume the Great Depression probably permanently changed things for people too. So if you're thinking ahead to what kind of job you want to go into, I think we just gave a list of some jobs that
we can tell you which ones not to go into.
Yeah, we can't tell you which ones to go into.
Right.
But I happen to believe that we're actually going to see more manufacturing coming back to Canada.
And I think that trend was going to happen anyway. This is going to accelerate it.
And that may be what's really happening, that the world hasn't changed so much as it's been accelerated.
Right.
So we've certainly observed the real life effects of disruptions in the supply chain.
That's been painfully clear. Anyone who's wanted to buy something and sorry, we can't get it because it comes from Asia.
Yep, or somewhere outside of our small area. So, I mean, Ontario is big enough. We've got almost 14 million people here. I mean, would be a decent-sized country, and we wouldn't be the smallest country in the world if we were a country.
Right.
Could we not have more of that manufacturing here? And I guess a lot of it depends, well, it all depends on us consumers.
Right.
Because I want to buy that thing and I only want to pay 47 cents. And if it's made here, it's going to cost 52.
Yeah. It's where you draw the line on the whole market-driven economy. So if you let the market decide everything, then you're going to build it somewhere in Africa. If you have other concerns, strategic, tactical, whatever you want them to be, then maybe there's other reasons to put it someplace else.
Yeah, and it will be interesting to see what the government does on that front, because you could have a very protectionist regime where there's high tariffs. Well, that forces production here.
Yep.
And that helps some people and hurts other people. So if you are the owner of the big mega business, well, you want as little regulation as possible.
Right.
But obviously higher tariffs potentially mean more jobs here, but it also means more costs here. Does that mean more inflation? Like there's many different layers to this. So practical advice then. So and I guess maybe on two fronts. First of all, on the job front, the future is so uncertain. how do I decide? Should I go back to school and train to do that, or should I not? Or should I take on student loan debts to do it or not? Like, how do you think through that process?
That I wouldn't be incurring a lot of student loan debt on something that you didn't know was going to be a sure thing. So, for instance, if you're going to go to school for 8 years and come out with a BA in art history, you're probably making a mistake. And that doesn't have anything to do with the pandemic. That's just my opinion of 8 years to get a BA in art history. On the other hand, there are never enough accountants. There are never enough engineers. Some of these things are going to be with us forever. It's like everything else. You need to have more of a plan as opposed to an impulse.
Well, and put yourself in the position of your potential employer.
Right. What do they want?
What do they want?
Need?
And can I outsource it? So one thing that can't be outsourced would be nursing.
Right.
Kind of hard to have someone in a different country providing that service locally.
Have them emigrate.
Well, but that's still, it's something that has to be done here. So manufacturing a widget, okay, that can be done anywhere.
Right.
But so the service economy, of course, is where all our jobs have been created, and they tend to be lower paying. But again, nursing is a service economy type job, but obviously a higher end thing. So I think you got to really think ahead and say, well, if the world continues like it is, what potential jobs will be out there? There will certainly be a whole lot of new ones that we haven't thought of.
Right.
But yeah, don't be too quick to rush into the old thing. So final question then, in terms of practical advice, let's talk about debt, because this is debt free in 30. So what we have seen is that debt levels for the last 20 years have been continuing to increase.
Yeah.
And for some people during the pandemic, debt has actually been reduced because they've been able to pay it off. They've had lower expenses and so on. For others, of course, they've had to rely on credit to survive, so it's gone up. What is your advice to someone who is in that situation where there's uncertainty? I've got debt. I don't know what to do. How do I think through a strategy to deal with that?
It all comes down to your comfort level and how much stress this is causing you. So if you're one of the people that's calling us now, it means that the level of debt you have is bothering you and you need to do something about it. There's a significant portion of the population that, because nobody is hounding me, the government isn't calling for my taxes, I'm not being threatened with lawsuits, they won't do anything until they are. But this is a very bad time to be incurring new debt if there's uncertainty in your future. So if you're working and you've been deferring things, and you've got a plan in place to deal with it, you're probably okay. The folks that are short on their month-to-month income, so they're living on the credit, it's just making things worse.
At what point do I start panicking then?
As soon as it starts affecting you can, how do I want to describe this? There are ways that stress manifests itself. You either start to eat more, you either put on weight or lose a lot of weight, you'd stop sleeping properly. Usually you can tell if you're not your normal self, and that because there's something underlying bothering you, and it's almost always money.
And so if you are at that point, then obviously that's where you got to reach out. I mean, I'm a big believer in not panicking.
Because it doesn't ever do any good.
No, it's not productive. So you got to, am I panicking about something real, or am I panicking about something that's not real or not a clear and present danger? So if you're not working, well, nobody can garnish your wages.
Right.
So the focus should be on what do I need to do to get back to work? If I am working, okay, well, at some point, am I earning enough money that I can pay this off?
Well, the issue right now for everybody is survival. And some of us are surviving plus, and some people aren't quite surviving. And so kind of where you fit on the spectrum. But, there's nothing wrong with contacting somebody like us right now, because we are literally advising people, well, look, don't get stressed out. Take your time. Your most important things are your food, your rent, your health. We'll deal with the debt for you, but maybe now isn't the right time. But you're putting a plan in place. You're already reaching out and getting advice. That's never a bad idea.
Yeah, and you do the same thing with medical issues. I've got this issue. I go to the doctor, and the doctor says, well, okay, we don't have to do emergency surgery today. We can wait. Maybe it'll correct itself. Maybe you can do physio, maybe whatever. But here are the things to watch for. If this gets worse, then you have to come back.
We'll do this,
And I think that's exactly what you're saying, that we don't know exactly what the right answer is for you today, but we can certainly walk you through, well, if this happens, do this. If this happens, do that.
Right.
What I'm saying to a lot of people is, okay, once you're back to work, that's when we really need to talk.
That's when they're going to ratchet up the pressure.
Right. But in the meantime, here's a couple of things you can do. We talk about, banking arrangements, making sure taxes are filed. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can be doing now so that we're ready to go. And I think you're right. It's just always a prudent plan. So there you go. Well, thank you, Ted, for coming back in and sitting behind the protective glass here. For those watching on YouTube, you can see
it's
that
real.
It's actually there. We will have many conversations, I suspect, about this as time goes on. But for now, that's our show for today. Thanks for listening. For Doug Hoyes, or I am Doug Hoyes. Until next week, we'll just edit that out.
That's right.
It won't be in the final. It won't be in the final thing. Until next week, for Ted Michalos, I'm Doug Hoyes. That was Debt Free in 30.